This is a Film Stories original podcast.
When it comes to weight loss, no two people are the same. That's why Noom builds personalized plans based on your unique psychology and biology. Take Brittany. After years of unsustainable diets, Noom helped her lose 20 pounds and keep it off.
I was definitely in a yo-yo cycle for years of just losing weight, gaining weight, and it was exhausting.
And Stephanie. She's a former D1 athlete who knew she couldn't out-train her diet, and she lost 38 pounds.
My relationship to food before Noom was never consistent.
And Evan, he can't stand salads, but he still lost 50 pounds with Noom.
I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. Even through the pickiness, Noom taught me that building better habits builds a healthier lifestyle. I'm not doing this to get to a number. I'm doing this to feel better.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom users compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Hi, I'm Kristen Cloak, and you are listening to the XCast.
Welcome back to the XCast. The truth is in here. I'm your host, Sarah Blair, and joining me on the show today is our contributor, Paige Schechter.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Good. And one of our awesome patrons, Jen Ferguson. Hi, Jen. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Sarah. Thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely. This is a very special episode because today we are going to be discussing the enigmatic Dr. Scully in season 1. And I'm really excited about this. I hope you guys are too. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I always love talking about Scully because she's the best.
She is the best.
Mm-hmm. Chris Carter has mentioned before that he used the character of Clarice Starling from Silence of the Lambs as a kind of an inspiration when he created the character of Dana Scully. So, what kind of similarities did you notice between these two characters while you were watching season 1? Did you notice any similarities or any differences that stood out to you?
Been a long time since I've watched Silence of the Lambs, to be honest, and it really scared me, so I've only been allowed to watch it once. But I guess sort of the most obvious similarities are that we have 2 female FBI agents, and they're both very sort of bright and talented and sharp and not necessarily like kind of the traditional feminine character that you might be used to seeing in movies and television, but someone who's just, tough, gets the job done, but at the same time has a certain amount of vulnerability to her. So that's kind of the parallel that I see.
I agree with that. I think she also had sort of this gravitas that both of these characters that we're talking about needed in order to make both those stories work. And the good thing is that she's green in the pilot, but you can see the smarts and you can see that this is a person that will have to be reckoned with, but she has a lot of growing to do and a lot of learning to do herself. So there's a lot of room for things to happen, which is good since there were 11 seasons.
I think I noticed most of all that Scully was like Clarice in that she was really eager to prove herself and kind of, they're both these women who are in basically a man's field of work. And especially, at the time in the early 90s, there were, I think the first woman came to the FBI in the very early 80s. If I recall correctly, I might be a little bit off by that. But, for the first 20, 30 years of the Bureau, it was all men. As far as field agents go, for sure. I'm sure that, they had secretaries and assistants and that sort of thing. But, it's definitely a man's field of work. And so I think that both of those characters were really eager to sort of establish themselves early on in their careers, and they're both, pretty green, like you said, in early in their careers, and we don't get to see Clarice. It's just the one case, but it's fun. I thought it was really fun to watch Scully go through this whole first season where she starts off, and this is basically kind of her first assignment in the Bureau. It doesn't really talk a lot about having her, have any previous partners, like Mulder did, but, or does it? I know she like goes with Colton, right? But that they were in the academy together. They weren't partners.
The former lover, Jack Willis from Lazarus.
So were they partners, or did she just date him when they were at Quantico?
Oh, that's a good question.
I thought he was an instructor at Quantico.
Okay, so it was more of on that particular case they were working together.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I think she had been teaching in the FBI before she was partnered with Mulder, so I don't think she'd even done really field work prior to that.
So this is kind of like her starting off, like jump-starting her. When we see her in the pilot, this is kind of basically her first field case. So, that's really exciting to, see that and kind of see the similarities between the two of those characters, I thought. And one of the things that I really enjoy about this show is that you can see it from so many different points of view and watch it in so many different ways. And to be honest, I had never consciously sat down and watched any of the episodes specifically from Scully's point of view. I just sort of had watched, as a fan and as a shipper and that sort of thing. I kind of have been watching it, from my point of view, but I never sat down and thought about everything with Scully specifically in mind, and, her studying her reactions to things and her motivations for things. So, was that different for you guys, like getting to sit down and really focus on Scully's point of view this time around in season 1?
Yeah, it was for me. I agree that it was a very different experience than just watching it normally and just kind of following the story and just kind of everything that's happening, Mulder and Scully, everything. But yeah, when I did the same, I kind of rewatched season 1 more looking at Scully, and it definitely was a different experience because she's kind of the straight man in a sense. She's kind of the less dramatic character between her and Mulder, so sometimes you don't always notice what she's doing unless you're looking for it. But when you're looking for it, she's always doing something. Her expressions, her reactions. I mean, Gillian Anderson is always fabulous. So it was interesting to pick up on a lot of sort of little things that I hadn't noticed before, and to kind of pick up on her character and how it developed during the season, which I hadn't really noticed before. I mean, it's been a long time since I've watched season 1 from start to finish, so it was fun to do that and to kind of watch the things that happened with Scully and to Scully and how different she was, really, from how she became even in the next couple of seasons and the changes that happened since then and even during that season.
For me, I do a rewatch blog with my sister, so I had already been through season 1 and really looking at it with a fine-tooth comb. The thing that I noticed most about in the first season is that early in the season, her theories about things can come off as sort of half-baked and not really logical as they should seem for a scientist. And when the more obvious answer is kind of like what Mulder has come up with, they weren't really doing her any favors. But by the end of the season, it shows there's kind of the partnership is working and the team functioning best because both of them are right to some degree, or we can empathize with both their points of view.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I definitely noticed that as well, that Yeah, her ideas are pretty kooky at the beginning. Mulder's so obviously right most of the time. But yeah, sort of in the last, especially the last few episodes, it could kind of go either way. Like in some cases, it's like, well, maybe Scully's right, maybe Mulder's right. At least her explanations are plausible. And some of the criticisms she has about what Mulder does are valid criticisms as well. So yeah, she gets a little sort of smarter maybe as time goes on, or at least is given credit for coming up with better ideas.
Well, do you think that maybe that has to do with, her eagerness in the beginning to kind of prove herself and to really show up, and like she's so eager to contribute that she just comes up with whatever wild theories she can pull out of thin air, so to speak, and like you said, it kind of later on she starts to come up with more logical explanation, and sort of instead of Mulder challenging her, it kind of swaps, and towards the end of the season she is more the one to challenge him on stuff. And I don't know if you guys saw that.
I think at the beginning she's wanting to toe the line, and the authority figures that they meet in each of their cases, she gives them the benefit of the doubt, and she's more likely to believe highly classified lies, and she kind of wants to stay on the straight and narrow. But then when we get to something like Toombs, and she has to go defend herself and Mulder to Skinner, she's explaining that nature is precluding orthodox investigation, and they have such a great solve rate, and admits she has a more open mind about the supernatural nature of their cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's definitely an arc that we see, I think. And I also think that, yeah, her explanations get better as the season goes on, because she's just exposed to more as the season goes on, and she starts to believe more as the season goes along. She's more and more convinced that she's, she is, I agree with Paige, she's quite sort of almost portrayed as naive in sort of the early half of the season about, she believes everything the government says, at least initially. But by the end, she's much more questioning. She's breaking into government facilities. She's like a different person, and I think it has a lot to do with just she's learned. She is open-minded, even though she does tend towards rational explanation. She doesn't rule out the possibility that there's other stuff going on, and she becomes a little bit more wise, especially to what's going on in the government as the season goes along.
Let's talk about Squeeze and Toombs a little bit, because I feel like those two episodes, Squeeze comes towards the very beginning of the season and Toombs is towards the very end, so they're kind of a really good way to compare how she changes over the course of the season. I mean, in Squeeze, she's still seeing her friends from the FBI class and having lunch with people, and she is getting hit with rumors about Mulder's reputation and that kind of thing. And so you sort of get the idea that she's kind of the popular girl, or at least she was in her class, and lots of people know her and like her and that kind of thing. And then by the time you get to Toombs, she's more withdrawn. She's not, out seeing as many people. It's kind of her and Mulder. And she's, taken into the office and run down by Skinner and very clearly told, she's not doing the job that they assigned to her. Her job was to debunk the X-Files. And, she does mention, I love how she stands up for herself against Skinner, because, she's like, we have a 75% closure rate, and that's way bigger than most everybody else in the Bureau. And, he's like, well, that's the only thing that's saving you at this point. So, do you think the Scully from Squeeze would have, I feel like she does kind of stand up for herself in the pilot when she's in with Blevins, and, she's like, am I to think that you want me to debunk the X-Files? And, she catches on, but, she kind of creeps up to the line, but she doesn't really toe it. And so she takes her assignment and she's excited to have an assignment and to finally have a partner and get out in the field. But then, when Toombs comes along, she's like ready to stand up to Skinner and fight for her and Mulder. So like, how do you think that, let's talk a little bit about what happens in those 2 episodes and how, she gets from point A to point B.
Yeah, those are 2 good episodes to sort of compare. Squeeze especially, I think you can compare a lot about even where she is at the start of Squeeze to where she is at the end of Squeeze. Because at the start, she's very friendly with Tom and, happy to talk about the old days and what's going on. And, she still seems keen to be part of that FBI mainstream to some extent. He like kind of jokes and teases her and calls her Mrs. Spooky. And she's like, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. But at the same time, she's defending Mulder a bit. She's not like, oh yeah, no, the X-Files is horrible there. She's not sure yet, I think, about how she feels about the X-Files. But she feels like she should want to be part of more the kinds of things that Tom's working on. And so, she's excited to be part of his case. And, she has to kind of sit through all these people making fun of Mulder, making little jokes about him. And she's not happy about that. They're all kind of jerks, as it turns out. And it's kind of that I think of that episode in particular as like a fork in the road for her as far as her career goes. She's given the opportunity to kind of work a little bit more with, is it the violent crime people that Tom's hanging with? And in the end, he offers to help her to get on board with them. In the end, she's like, nope, I'm assigned to the X-Files. She realizes the X-Files is actually fun for her. She's enjoying that. She has like a whale of a time in that case, really. She can't wait to jump down that hole at the end to go looking for Toombs. She's like, yep, let's go down and find out what's down there. So I think she realizes how much fun she's having on the X-Files and how, maybe the FBI mainstream isn't all it's cracked up to be, because those guys are kind of jerks, and it's all about ambition. And she's got that great line where Tom says, whose side are you on, like me or Mulder's? And she says, the victims. And you can see how she's not seeing a lot of integrity in someone like him, whereas maybe Mulder has a little bit more integrity and is doing important work, even if it seems a little crazy to everybody else, that she gets that his work matters and that she likes it. So that's kind of an important sort of development for her during Squeeze. And then by the time, of course, we get to Toombs, she's all in by that time. And we've had a few episodes along the way that have kind of moved her in that direction. We see her getting more and more involved in his work and invested in Mulder and his work. And it's become her work as well. And she thinks of herself as more and more as part of the X-Files, I think. And so, yeah, she's, like you say, she's defending their work at the meeting with Skinner at the beginning. And, it's their conviction rate. It's her as part of the team. And, she's talking to Mulder later on. She's on Mulder's side, clearly. Her loyalty is to him, because she's talking to him later saying, oh, yeah, Skinner tried to reel me in, because she's not talking to Skinner about Mulder as honestly as she's talking to Mulder about Skinner. So we see that that's where her loyalty is. That's where her allegiance is. She's breaking a few rules. She's on this sort of unsanctioned stakeout with him. She gives him really a false alibi for, the attack that Toombs actually tries to pin on Mulder. So she's like, the book is out the window by that time. And
yeah.
It's because of the things she's seen. It's because of the things that she's gone through. And, Mulder has proved that, the things that he does are worthwhile, and that maybe playing things by the rules isn't everything it's cracked up to be. And she trusts him. She says, it's kind of a key moment in the season in, I think it's EBE, where she says, Mulder, you're the only one I trust. And we see that. She doesn't really trust the FBI structure anymore, the brass, the bigwigs. She really does only trust Mulder, and we see that. So there's a huge arc between those two episodes that we see. So you can definitely see the difference. Although even in Squeeze, you can start to see the little hints that she is on Mulder's side. She's interested in what he's doing, and even though she feels like she's not quite ready to sort of go all in at that point, she has the idea that that's the direction she wants to go.
You know, in the pilot episode, Scully is chosen specifically for her scientific background with not only medicine, but she rewrites Einstein and physics and all that. So she's like mega scientist. And, you know, Blevins flat out tells her, like, we want you to debunk the X-Files. And I love that scene because she is clearly not work against Mulder until she meets him and forms her own conclusions about his work. So what are some of the key moments that you feel happen throughout the season after that kind of change her and help her to get to the point, where she's saying, you're the only one I trust, Mulder, and to get to her to stand up against Skinner in Toombs.
Even back in Squeeze, when she's talking to her former classmate, it doesn't really feel like she fits in with them. Like maybe at that point she still kind of wants to, but and it's not even just because she's on the X-Files. She just doesn't seem to have that temperament, and that's why the quote that Jen used was perfect. Whose side are you on? The victims. That's where her mind is, and it is different from where Tom Colton and the rest of her classmates theoretically are. So she's one place, he's another place, and Mulder is all the way on the other side.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
I always thought the biggest moments of growth for her in this season come in Ice and Beyond the Sea. Ice was the first one when I thought, oh, this guy Mulder, he's not going to be right 100% of the time. She's going to be right. She is so strong and she's smart and she's on equal footing with him, and she is physical in that episode. She's jumping on Bear and she's swinging pipe. And then in more of an emotional sense with Beyond the Sea, it was kind of like her second coming out party. It's the 13th episode, and she's already grown by so much, but now she's opening up to the extreme possibilities. And ironically enough, it's in one when Mulder doesn't believe, he's not buying what she is saying is happening between her and Boggs.
How do you think Scully's relationship specifically with her father and the rest of her family sort of define her drive, so to speak? I mean, I know that she kind of goes against her parents' wishes after she goes through medical school, and she's still really, really young. So, she has the degree to be called a doctor and the experience, but, she hasn't done like the residency and all that kind of stuff. So, like, she chooses to veer off on this path to go to the FBI, and that takes a lot of boldness, really, to go kind of against what your parents thought you were going to do.
It does.
How does that show on the screen?
I think she seems like such a little girl with her dad at the beginning of Beyond the Sea. Her father's respect meant so much to her, and that's why his passing really affected her the way it did, because she didn't realize she knew how he felt. And she was Daddy's little girl. She's Daddy's little girl through so much of that episode, but yet she's growing in so many other ways.
I love in that episode where, she's at the funeral and she's talking with her mom, and she asks, was Dad proud of me? And it's so interesting because that's one of those moments where when I was younger, before I became a mom, I thought that was such a BS answer and like such a cop-out. But now that I'm a parent and I watch that episode, I'm like, well, yeah, that's exactly the answer, but I like that, she kind of got that through the rest of the episode, and then by the time the end came, when Boggs, told her, like, be ready and be there, and you'll get your message from your father. And then she was mature enough and to know, and like even just through the course of that one episode and everything that she'd been through, she realized she already knew and had the answer. And so I thought that showed a lot of maturity. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but I kind of was watching because in the first 12 episodes, she's pretty cheeky and kind of got a lot of spunk. And after Beyond the Sea, after her father dies, I feel like she sobers up quite a bit. Like, she's still got snark, but it's not as playful.
Yeah, I did notice the exact same thing, actually. That, yeah, the Scully in, like, the first sort of half of the season is quite a different Scully than we're used to seeing, really, in later seasons, because the episodes are a bit lighthearted. She's very lighthearted. She is, like you say, she's kind of making the snarky jokes and teasing Mulder a lot, and she smiles quite a bit, which is a rare and wonderful thing. But yeah, Beyond the Sea, she changes, and for the next following episodes, that change takes root. And I think she kind of evolves into the more recognizable Scully that we're used to seeing in later episodes, where she's more serious. She's still, got the emotions, but they're a little bit more contained. And she's, there's just a little sense of a little bit of angst there, sort of under the surface. And I think that is partly because of the death of her father, but I think also because of what happens in the events of Beyond the Sea, because she's so shaken by her beliefs being so questioned in her interactions with Boggs, and her wondering, what to believe by the end of this. Can he really communicate with my father beyond the grave? And when she has that vision of her father after his death too, it shakes her up, because her beliefs in sort of rational thinking and in science are so important to her that the more that faith gets challenged, the more serious she gets, and the more kind of thrown she gets a little bit, and the more sort of lost she starts to feel, really. And so that's part of her seriousness. And she starts to also, I think, because she's becoming a little bit more open-minded about the things that Mulder is doing and the things that they are doing as part of the X-Files, that she starts to realize what the stakes are as well. The things she starts to see, the belief she starts to kind of have questions. She realizes there's some high stakes here, that, it was a bit of a lark before with the X-Files. This was all kind of fun. We were going on these kooky paranormal cases, but now all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, like, this is some pretty big picture life and death stuff going on here that I had no clue about before. And as each episode for the rest of that season unfolds, her beliefs are increasingly questioned. She starts to see more and more of the big picture, and she takes it much more seriously. Even though there's still, a nice bit of banter back and forth, but yeah, she's definitely very different at the end of the season than she was at the beginning.
Oh, I definitely agree, and I think it's such a great place for that change to happen. A lot of times when you're watching a TV show or a movie, people change, and there's not really a reason for it. Like, it's just a sort of an odd couple situation, and people just start to get along. But here we have a reason for it, and it makes a lot of sense, and it works so well, and it's because of Gillian. I don't know if it's the conscious choice she made, it's the conscious choice Chris Carter and the writers made, but it really works for the character.
Right. It's so subtle, too, because it's not something, unless you're really looking for it, that I honestly never noticed it before, when I wasn't really looking for that, but then, it made total sense. And how do you feel that, Gillian Anderson was 24 when she got this job. That's a baby. Really. How, and Scully is about the same age, really. Maybe a little technically a little bit older, but yeah, well, yeah, like 60. Scully is born in 64. So, how do you think Gillian Anderson's personal drive compares with Scully's personal journey to prove herself? Like, do you think she was able to use all of that to, 'cause she was just starting out as an unknown actress. Scully was starting out as an unknown agent. Like, do you think that helped her at all?
I think it gave her a lot of confidence. When you see that scene in Beyond the Sea and she's confronting Boggs and the way she speaks and her tone raises and raises and raises, if I tried to yell at someone like that, it would not come out as perfectly as that came out. That is such nuanced and perfect delivery, and you can see it's such a big change from the pilot where Dana feels uncomfortable and Gillian seems a little uncomfortable, but now Dana may be still uncomfortable, but Gillian is in control of her powers.
Right? I mean, that's the perfect description, too, because, she is a goddess, and she's, like, super powerful. Beyond the Sea is not one that I had previously watched a lot of. I mean, I would watch it on a full rewatch, but I hadn't seen it quite so much as some of the other ones, but then watching it this time, I was just like blown away. And it's one of those where everybody's like, Beyond the Sea is the greatest episode. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good. And now I'm like, yes, I'm on board with this. I mean, when she is like chewing him out at Boggs, when she's like, you set us up, and she's going on this whole thing. Like, it gave me chills. And it was just amazing to watch her stand up to him like that, and just, like, the acting prowess that it took to pull that off was just incredible to me.
That's, like, one of my all-time favorite Scully scenes, because my favorite Scully is Badass Scully, and she is so badass in that scene. She is, she's really, truly angry, but, I think Paige described it perfectly. She delivers it really well. She's not, like, angry, out of control, screaming angry. She still manages to deliver her message, and in a really impactful way, and you can tell she means it. So I love that scene. It's one of my favorite scenes from probably the whole of season 1 when it comes to Scully, because she really lets loose with a little bit of rage, and she doesn't do that very often. I mean, in like 11 seasons, we don't see her do that very often. But it's effective. It works really well. You can tell she means it. She has reason to feel that way. I mean, Mulder's been shot, and she feels like this is Boggs doing largely. She feels like her emotions that have been so stirred up throughout this whole episode are getting screwed around by this guy, and she's letting him have it, and love it. I could watch that scene over and over like 10 times a day, and I'd be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this didn't really occur to me any other time, but I mean, you've got Scully, who just lost her father, the most important man in her life, for her entire life, and then Mulder gets shot. And he is the new relative. I mean, she's the new man in her life, and she looks up to him in a different way, I think, than her father, but she still looks up to him. She still admires him. She may or may not, I'm pretty sure she probably does, have romantic feelings for him at this point. I mean, in, Jersey Devil, her sister-in-law says that she mentioned he was cute. So, I mean, come on. So, and this early on, she's still trying to have a life. So she's probably thinking about dating guys still, and like, hey, this guy's kind of cute and he's super smart. It's my kind of guy. So, but I mean, like in this one episode, she loses her father. She's possibly about to lose her partner, who she just found, and who she's like really working well with. So that's pretty intense for one girl to go through in the short span of time. I mean, it's only a week, really, that she loses her father and then this happens. That's pretty intense. And, she pulls it off really well, I think. So how do you think, I want to talk to you guys about, we can't gloss over Mulder at all, but I want to make it about Scully and her feelings. So what do you think it is about the X-Files that is attractive to her? And then also, what is it about Mulder's personality that gets her to stick with the X-Files and gets her to, because, I think Squeeze is a pretty pivotal point where she makes a very clear choice to go one way or the other. So what do you think it is about the X-Files that really, tickles her fancy, I guess? do you think if it was a different agent on the X-Files that she would still have stuck with it the way she did? Or do you think it was the X-Files, or do you think it was Mulder, or do you think the combination really got her to stick with it?
I wear my shipper identity on my sleeve, so I'm going to probably say it's Mulder, but it is both. At the beginning especially, she's just intrigued by the X-Files, I think, because it's something different. It's something outside of her experience. At first, she's a bit dismissive towards this paranormal stuff, but as time goes on, she's seeing stuff she never thought she'd see. And she is a curious person. We see that even when she's very super skeptical, especially in the early episodes. She's still really curious about everything. She's interested. She's engaged. These are cool cases for her, and she likes them a lot. And she does like Mulder a lot, too. I think, Mulder and the X-Files are kind of one and the same for her, as really they are. But she admires his commitment to it. He's enthusiastic, and he's kind of fun to be around because he's so excited about these cases, and he wants to he's interested in finding the truth just like she is. On the side of the victims. He's not concerned about playing the FBI game, moving up the corporate ladder, any of that stuff. He really is just interested in the cases, and she likes that because that's how she is too. And she's just having a lot of fun. And as time goes on, I think she becomes a little bit more interested in Mulder personally. I think that she gets, like I said, emotionally involved in the X-Files and emotionally involved with Mulder kind of at the same time, and so it all becomes important to her in kind of a combined way. And she cares about Mulder personally as well. We see that a few times. She's worried about his well-being. She wants to make sure he's okay when his ex-partner dies in Ghost in the Machine. She's concerned about his emotional state. And we see that a few times throughout the season, that she cares about him personally and wants to look out for him. I think she gets the sense early on that he does not look out for himself. And so she almost starts to feel like it's kind of her job to look out for him and to look out for the X-Files within the context of the FBI, because she knows that they're out to get the X-Files. She knows that, and from quite early on, she sees it as her job to defend the X-Files and to protect the X-Files, and also as an extension to protect Mulder. We see that in Fallen Angel at the end. She's talking to kind of the FBI bigwig types, and she tries to defend Mulder as best she can in his actions through that episode. They don't really want to hear it. She doesn't get a chance to defend him as much as she wanted to. But then Mulder goes in. It's his turn to talk to them, and she's worried. She's really worried about the whole situation, and he's like, I didn't think I'd last this long. So she seems to care about him and the X-Files more than he does in some ways at that point, because he doesn't think that it's going to last, but she's determined that it will, and she looks out for him and for the X-Files, and she cares a lot about him. She says I think it's in EBE where she says that she admires and respects his passion, that's something that she admires, whereas other people might use that against him because he's so focused on his work that they might manipulate him because of that. But she says, to her it's a good thing, but it can also be a bit of a dangerous thing. But I'm trying to look out for you here. And so I think she's just, she gets swept up in his enthusiasm, in his passion, in his focus. And, who wouldn't? He's a fun guy who's really into this stuff, and it's cool stuff, and she gets into it, she gets into him, it's all great.
I am not a shipper by nature, although
Let's get the non-shipper point of view.
Yes.
Let's get this. Yeah.
I've certainly been known to enjoy some shippy moments, but I'm not a shipper. I think when she starts, she is so excited about finding all her answers through science, and she thinks all she has to do is look in the right place, and she's going to find the answers to all these cases. And then as she goes through them, she kind of sees it's not the case, and Mulder earns her respect by being as smart as he is and figuring out the way he does, and in this particular season, also caring for people is a big thing. Mulder wants to make sure the little boy in Conduit is okay, and the woman in Shadows is okay, and taking care of people. So she, like Jen just said, how she wants to kind of take care of Mulder while he's taking care of everybody. Mm-hmm. So I think there's sort of a chorus of that during the season, and their relationship certainly is a lot stronger at the end, because in EBE, when she says she'd never met anyone as dedicated as Mulder. Now, she's been in the FBI and she's been in the classes she was in, and she's obviously met a lot of dedicated people. So to use that line, he's really got to have this laser focus that she hasn't been seeing before. And she's sort of becoming that way herself. She sees a lot of herself in him now.
Let's talk about just briefly about some of our favorite Scully moments. I know we've mentioned a few, but a couple that really stood out to me, especially in the pilot, I love that moment where she's freaking out about these mosquito bites on her back. She thinks that it's, some kind of the alien whatever, and so she goes over to Mulder, and there's that one split second where she tells him, she needs to show him this, and she's got her robe on and her bra and her panties, and she hesitates, visibly hesitates. And then she's like, okay, I need to do this because this is more important. I need to find out if this is an alien, I'm going to be abducted by aliens, which I know it wasn't intentional at the time because they didn't know that she was going to get pregnant and then they were going to have the abduction storyline, but it worked out great because it kind of was good foreshadowing, I think, where it really freaked her out that the idea of possibly being abducted by aliens, even though she doesn't really believe in aliens yet, but she believes it enough to be scared about it and go to Mulder about that. And then they end up having this really, get to know each other moment together, in his hotel room with the candlelight because the power is out from the storm. And, I love that moment where she's it's important because it changed. I feel like it's one of the moments where she's like, okay, I'm doing this job, and then she believes at that point this might be a real thing, he might be telling the truth about aliens. But I liked that moment. And what are some of your favorite moments throughout the season other than some of the ones that we've talked about?
We talked about a lot of them, but Darkness Falls I want to bring in because she is so scrappy in there. She's able to do everything that the guys are doing. She is hoisting herself up trees to look in cocoons, and in episodes like Darkness Falls and Ice, she's so tough. She does. Right. She has the little meltdown in Darkness Falls when she realizes the mites are everywhere. But I'm not going to fault her for that because I would totally
right
as well.
The first time that I was like, "Hey, this is my girl was probably in Deep Throat because I love badass Scully. And for much of that episode, she's like, well, the government has the right to protect their secrets. We should just pack up and go. And, of course, Mulder ditches her and takes off. And she's like, oh, geez, well, now what am I going to do? And she still, at that point, is just kind of like, let's just get the heck back to Washington. But then she kind of figures out that there's something amiss with the phones. And she just, all of a sudden, just a switch is flipped. And she gets it that there's something actually going on here, and she encounters the guy who was actually like one of these sort of military security people, but pretending to be this reporter, and she has a little chat with him, and she just figures it out right then and there. He is trouble, and she jumps into his car, locks the doors, and starts looking and rifling through it, and finds the gun, takes him hostage, gets Mulder back. It's like she is kicking ass so bad in that episode, and I'm loving it. And she's starting to get it. The wheels are starting to turn. It still takes much of the season before she really starts to believe it, but you can see that she's already starting to think, hey, this Mulder guy might be onto something here. He's not just crazy paranoid. There's some crap going on here, and I need to take some action. And I love it. I love the fact that she's allowed to be this sort of action chick, that she saves Mulder, which is great. She doesn't always need to be saved. So I love that moment. There's a lot of moments throughout the season where she's kicking some ass, like in Squeeze, for example. When Toombs comes after her in her home and Mulder bursts in to kind of save her, in the end she kind of saves herself. She gets the handcuffs onto Toombs and handcuffs him like to her bathtub or whatever. And once again, she kind of saves herself. So I love the fact that she can look out for herself. She's just this little tiny person. But it's like what Paige says. She can keep up with the boys, and she can kick ass. And she's smart and she's tough, and I love every scene where we see that. I
really like that she gets kidnapped, abducted, almost raped in this season in Genderbender. She gets, taken hostage and Born Again, and taken hostage, attacked in her own home and Squeeze. She goes through the ringer. And, you don't really see Mulder getting put through that. So, and not only that, but in Ice, she's stranded. Mulder is, stranded along with her in Ice, but still, she really goes through a lot this season. Almost poisoned by two little twins. What even? Poor Scully. But, she really comes out on top, I think. I don't think any little girl could have done that. It's really hit on by Frohickey. Maybe. I love that Mulder is do you think it's remotely plausible that somebody could think you're hot? And she kind of just brushes it off. So yeah, she is tough. And I think that's really what makes her stand out as a character, because at this point in time, there really weren't that many characters on TV like her. Buffy was pretty tough. But, it's pretty much Scully and Buffy at this point. And I think that's why it was so important to have her as a character to look up to, because, people kind of latch on to her greatness because, she was a really singular character.
She was recently voted the best character of all time.
Yay! There you go. You got it. Yeah. Yeah, Scully. So, so I think that it's been really fun to kind of examine how she got her start in the season and what a great arc she has in this season, because it's really solid, even though it's kind of more, the X-Files quote at this point, belong to Mulder, but she makes them her own in a way, which is really cool, I think.
Yeah.
So yay, Scully.
Yay, Scully.
Woohoo! So I have put together a few quotes from this season, ladies, if you're up for it.
Oh boy.
If I shout them out, do you want to try to guess the episode they came from?
Do we ring in or something?
I mean, just shout it out.
Okay, all right. Assuming that I could actually think of any answers.
They're pretty easy.
All right,
I mean,
let's go.
honestly, we've already said, probably 3 or 4 of them just
all right, we better get them
talking
now.
this episode. So, I'm going to mix them up, though, just to be wild and crazy.
Do it.
Okay. This one actually, a couple of them, I couldn't find a whole lot of one-liners. I tried, but, okay, so a couple, Mulder says, "How was the wedding?" And Scully says, "You mean the part where the groom passed out or the dog bit the drummer?" Goes,
Roland.
Did you catch the bouquet? And she goes, "Maybe."
Roland.
Yay for Scully snark. Okay, let's see here.
That's awesome. I love that bit.
It's great, right?
Isn't it great?
Mulder, "The truth is out there, but so are lies."
EBE.
Very good, Paige. That is correct. Let's see. Oh, Mulder says, "I was merely extending her a professional courtesy." And Scully says, "Oh, is that what you were extending?"
Fire.
Fire.
Yep.
Fire. Very good. I told you these would be easy.
Now she's going to burn us. Fire, burn.
Yeah.
Mulder, "Why would alien beings travel light years to Earth in order to play doctor on cattle?"
That's one of the first ones.
It's one of the early ones.
Deep Throat?
Mm-mm.
Conduit?
Nope.
The pilot?
Damn it.
No.
I'm running out.
Let me think. Oh, Eve.
Yes, Eve 6.
Oh!
Yes. Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
I think he says that line more than once.
Maybe.
We already said this one. Mulder, "I wouldn't put myself on the line for anybody but you."
Tombs.
Yeah.
One of the all-time great stripper lines.
Oh, yeah. Good stuff. This is one of my very favorite lines of the whole series. "You're saying that time disappeared? Time can't just disappear. It's a universal invariant."
Pilot.
Yeah.
Also, one of my favorite lines, I put it to you from the pilot. "Am I to understand that you want me to debunk the X-Files project, sir?"
Yeah, I
Love
like
that.
the way she says debunk.
Yes. Debunk. It's perfect. Oh, this one. You'll know this one right away. "It may be a cold, dark place for you, but it's not for Mulder, and it's not for my father."
Beyond the sea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you suspect what? Bigfoot?
Ooh. Is it Darkness Falls?
Yep. Okay, this is a good one. "You know, I've always held science as sacred. I've always put my trust in the accepted facts. What I saw last night, for the first time in my life, I don't know what to believe."
Erlenmeyer Flask?
Yeah, it is.
It's one of my favorite quotes.
The Erlenmeyer Flask quote is, "If this is monkey pee, you're on your own."
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the quote of the episode.
Oh, this is an easy one, too. "Is this what it takes to climb the ladder, Colton? All the way to the top.
You just
And I
gave
can't
it
wait till
away.
you fall off and land on your ass."
That would
we
be
have to say
Squeeze.
Squeeze, yeah. Squeeze, obvious. Okay, this is the last one, I think. "Mulder, you could have shown that kid a picture of a flying hamburger and he would have told you that's exactly what he saw."
Deep Throat?
That one is Deep Throat.
Yeah.
Yay, you guys did a
Yes.
good job. Do you have any other quotes that you can think of that you love?
What about, "Does this pitch somehow end with a way for me to lower my long-distance charges?"
That's great. Oh, I love it.
Love it.
Which
Yep.
is from where?
Is it Deep Throat?
Nope.
No.
Let me think. Roland?
Yes.
There you go.
This Jen is a ringer.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this discussion. I mean, I feel like I could talk about Scully all day.
Yeah. Me too.
But we gotta stop somewhere, right? All right, friends and files. Thank you so much for listening. Jen and Paige, thank you so much for having a great discussion. So I think we all know where to find each other at this point. Really, X-Files, Xcast Basement, Facebook, Twitter, we're all around. You can find us, right? Okay, friends, until next time, trust no one.
The Xcast, an X-Files podcast, is produced and presented by Tony Black, alongside a dedicated group of podcasters and X-Files fans. You can find us on Twitter at the Xcast, and on Facebook if you type in the Xcast, or at our group X-Files Basement, an Xcast podcast fan group, where you can continue the discussion about all things Mulder and Scully. If you want to support the Xcast further, you can now subscribe and become a patron of the show on Patreon. On Google, just type patreon.com/the Xcast. That's Patreon. You'll see all of our tiers, subscription options and perks, which include early access to episodes, bonus content such as commentaries on X-Files episodes, access to a patron chat zone, and even appearing on one of our patron roundtable discussions. We would appreciate any support you can give the show, so just go to patreon.com/the Xcast to find out more. Our title music is provided courtesy of Will A, who you can find on Twitter at IamWillAYE.